Welcome to Journeys of Empowerment. I'm your host, Michiel Soetjiet-Rijt. And we all want to make a difference, right? But life can be tough. This podcast is about learning from role models who face challenges, overcome them, and spark real change. Your journey to unlock potential starts now. And before we dive in, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Neotopia, creating real lasting change. What Neotopia does best is spark agency by helping managers step into their role as influencers of positive behavior. It's not about control, it's about empowering teams through positive reinforcement that makes a difference. If that resonates, check out neotopia.nl. Revolution begins with you. What if the way we work truly supported us? Today's guest, Mustafa El Maghrabi, knows firsthand what it means to start over, adapt, and build something bigger than yourself. Originally from Cairo, Egypt, Mustafa moved to the Netherlands, climbed the corporate ladder, faced burnout, and realized something. Employee benefits are broken. That's why he built Novu, a platform designed to give employees real choice and real support. His story is about resilience, revolution, and trusting your gut when the stakes are high. What we explore today, the real reason employee perks fail and what it needs to change. Burnout, mental health and recovery, the wake-up call that led to Novu. Lessons from the Egyptian revolution, what collective actions teaches us about leadership, the power of intuition, and why your gut might be your greatest asset. Impacting 100 million lives, while Mustafa believes the future of work is flexible. Revolution begins with you. Let's get into it. Hey Mustafa, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
I am very, very excited to be here.
Very nice. Take us a little bit through who is Mustafa.
Well, okay, good question. I am Mustafa. As the name give it away, I'm not from here. Well, I could be from here. I'm from Egypt, Cairo, Egypt, originally, and I moved to the Netherlands 9 years ago. Actually, I'm gonna turn 10 years in April of this year. So exciting about this 1 decade anniversary, and I'm gonna celebrate it in the most Dutch way ever.
Oh, okay, and that is.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna throw like a orange themed party at my place to celebrate that and just play all the Dutch hits, like the stuff that comes with like shunga yunga yunga. Okay.
Looking forward to that one. and you're now almost 10 years here in the Netherlands.
True.
And some more about, zeg maar, what are you doing right now?
Right. So, building up on the top of who I am. I'm a tech person. I'm a product manager. I studied engineering, and from there I went to do like some business development and sales because I but I realized I'm not going to be a good engineer sitting down behind a screen just writing code all day. Too talkative, too social for that. So yeah, I did product. I founded my very first startup when I was in university. And then moved to product, and then now I'm back again to be a founder. So this is my second time being a founder. So I'm currently working on Novu, which is a flexible employees perks and benefits platform. And
flexible perks and benefits.
Yep.
Platform.
Cool. And we are on a mission to empower employers to support their employees and provide them with the tools and needed for them to be taken care of and develop professionally and personally.
Wow, beautiful. And yeah, that makes me right away curious, and I can imagine the listener too. Why Novu?
Why Novu?
And why
as
on
the
this
name,
mission?
Or why
The mission? Yeah, the mission.
The mission goes back to I've been in tech for the past 10 years. So I worked for startups, scale-ups, big names like Booking. And there is one thing that I noticed is that when it comes to perks and benefits, there is always this like one size fits all, right? It comes from top down. Here it is. It's very static. It doesn't work for everyone. And there is an intention to support you, to give you things that makes you feel, I don't know, happy and supported and taken care of. So the intention is there, but there's a massive gap between intention and execution. And I never really paid attention to it. I was just like, okay, that's not cool. They are willing to pay, but they are not willing to pay for the stuff that I want to have. Why can't I get a gym instead of yoga at the office? Can I just take the same money? Oh no, you cannot. But long story short, there was at one point of my career, I got into a burnout. And after during my burnout, I had a lot of time to reflect. And I also had a chance to start using tools that helped me out. Like my therapist recommended, hey, start meditating, do some breath work, start working out. This is really crucial for your recovery. And I did that, and it helped a lot. And then when I went back to work, I just thought for myself, okay, why companies are not able to provide, I know, perks and benefits to enable their employees to de-stress, to be able to support them. But also I looked at the numbers and I was like, oh, there's 7 out of 10 employees, they actually ended up dealing with burnout. The cost of mental health just in Europe, I would say somewhere about 140 billion. That's the cost of absence due to mental health issues. And I was like, okay, there's probably a need for such a thing, to be able to support employers, to give them the tools or a platform that they can give to their employees to support them. So being the tech nerd that I am, I was like, hey, you know what? There's no one solving this problem or solving it well, and I think I can do it. So let's deploy all of this knowledge and experience that I had and try to build this, given that I experienced this firsthand and I've seen this happening not just to me, obviously as a personal experience, but to many of my colleagues and to many of my friends. And I wish that during that time there was tools or things that will help me out during this period of time, whether before or during or after. So that was when we realized, hey, there's a gap and we can go solve this problem.
And the problem is, what is specifically the problem you're trying to solve then?
So the problem. So let's talk about the current situation, right? When it comes to the state of perks and benefits, generally speaking, right? Mm-hmm. It always works the following: there is there is an offering. It's static. We give it to everyone, right? And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, all right, too bad. And there's a lot of money get wasted when it comes to sourcing vendors, managing vendors, and for if you go to any company or any startup or scale up, I'm just going to talk about tech because I'm more familiar with the tech industry. The HR folks, they are normally really spread thin, and they have 1,000,001 thing they need to get done, and no one got the time to sit down and be like, oh, let me survey what each and every employee want, because employees have different needs. Different ones depending on their life stage, their setup, are they are hybrid, are they are fully remote, their gender, their age, etc. So it's ever changing, and for them to be able to cater for each and every employee's needs while having a limited budget and limited time, it's just close to impossible. Hence why they were always like, okay, there is this 2 or 3 services that we have, and if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, well, too bad. And you end up having 60% plus of employees are not able to utilize the offering. So it's wasted money, wasted potential. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. So how can we make sure that whatever budget that you have as a company, that you can have flexible perks and benefits for your employees that they can choose themselves while you're being fully in control when it comes to budget, when it comes to where they're going to spend it and so on. But still, employees can actually pick and choose what works best for them. And it's a win-win for everyone, right? So once you have happy employees, that's impact your business positively. So yeah, that was this is the current challenge that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of help in your wording. It's about help. And where does the passion for helping others come from?
Yeah, it's a personal thing. I think we talked about this before.
Yes, we had a pre-conversation for the listener. We always do a pre-conversational call to get to know each other a little bit more. And in this case, Mustafa and I know each other quite well, quite some time.
True.
But it's always interesting to have a conversation call and go deeper and touch upon, well, the journey we're going to share with the broader audience.
Yep.
So back over to you.
Over to me. So you asked me like, hey, what is the meaning, or something along the line of like, what is the meaning of life, or like what drives you? Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, okay, the meaning of life is basically to see how many skills that I have and how many skills that I can acquire that have utility, and actually take these skills and put it in use to serve something greater than myself. And that's something that's been always like my North Star and like a driver for me. Even when I was just an employee, I was making conscious decision like, oh, I'm going to work for this company versus that company because, oh, if I work in this product, I'll be able to impact X number of people more than that company, and in a meaningful way. For example, I did work for Booking for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. And for me, what was really meaningful is that I go to interview our customers, which is that case hotels and hotel owners, and they would tell me like, hey, 50-60% of my income or my revenue is coming from your product. So for me, that was something meaningful, that I wake up every day, go to work day in, day out, like in the trenches with the team to enable hundreds of thousands of partners around the globe to be able to like have revenue. Mm-hmm. If you look at it deeper, like, okay, they're able to like send their kids to school, put money in, put food on the table, be able to employ other people, and other people do the same. So there's this positive effect and positive impact that I'm enabling together with the team, just using our skill set and something that we're passionate about, which is like building tech products. So for me, the entire thing about help and enablement just comes from that. Like, I do have certain skill set. I'm good at certain things. I'm passionate about certain things. How can I take these and actually employ all of that passion and interest and skill set to be able to have a positive impact and enable and empower others?
Beautiful. And what does it answer into yourself? Because there's always a reason behind the reason, and it's a very admirable reason why you want to do a lot of good.
Yep.
The question behind that is what led you on the path to, well, let's say you with your capabilities, and there's a high demand on product owners, product managers. There's a lot of I think it could be easily earned a lot of money in any scaling up, rapidly growing tech company.
And I did,
but why then choose the hard way of entrepreneurship, and what is there the driving force?
Right. So I'm not gonna lie and say like it's always been like that. It wasn't. Early on in my career, I was just, hey, can I just get a job? And then you move from there, like, oh, now I have a job. Can I just get a better paying job? And you just like follow the money. Mm-hmm. But then you get to a point where like, okay, I not like I made shit tons of money, but like I made some money, and now I can actually look inwards and be like, I fulfilled my basic needs, which is now I can make a living, pay my bills, life is good, right? And then from there you start like, okay, but is it meaningful what I'm doing? So at the beginning it was just fulfill my basic needs, and then from there I got a chance to be like, oh, I'm grateful that I'm in tech and I'm getting paid well, and there's a demand for me being a product manager. Now I can actually think deeper and be like, what actually fulfillment, what makes me happy? And for me to be able to help others, that was like, okay, that makes me happy. So I start to, instead of like, let's say, and I'm not trying to like belittle any industry. Like I can work, I interviewed with one company, they reached out, they do food delivery. It was at the hype of the food delivery time during Corona. And for me, I was like, I had the talk, great salary, great offer, but I was like, that's not for me. I would just rather do something that's a little bit more meaningful than getting food from A to B faster. So yeah, that was the driving force behind that. I fulfilled my basic needs, and I started thinking like, okay, what makes me happy on a deeper level? And that was it. And I think probably it's stemming from growing up as the firstborn child for my family. I got 3 siblings, and I was just conditioned that, hey, you're the older kid. You have to take care of everyone around you. You have to provide. You have to lead. You have to help and support and so on. So that was just like deeply, I guess, embedded inside of me, and it just makes me feel happy when I'm able to do so. And then I'm glad that I got to a point in my life where I'm actually able to do this throughout my career and not just on a personal level. And throughout my entire lifespan, I would say I've been always involved in initiative like, coaching and mentoring minorities who want to come into the tech industry, or coaching women in tech, volunteering and cooking for people in need. So all of this initiative was always something that I'm involved in outside work. And then to be able to look at your work and be like, I can actually pivot what I do a little bit and bring it closer to what fulfill my heart. It's just a great privilege. So I hope that answered the question.
Partly,
Yeah.
partly, and what got me always curious when entrepreneurial people tell about what they're doing. It's a lot about helping. So social impact is a lot about helping, mentoring others, bringing out the best in people, serving, being responsible for community. That we hear a lot, and let me be clear, I admire that to the fullest. It made me right away also curious, because if you don't have to do it, and you have other options with easy, more money, why are we choosing this specific path? And where does that comes from? It always, in my opinion, it almost always ties back to, let's say, our personal journey and our upbringing and where we grew and where we are born and what we faced as challenges, setbacks, life adversity, childhood experience, maybe trauma. I fundamentally believe
all of the above.
I fundamentally believe that there is a strong correlation between our personal journey and the deep down urge, because you can't see that, of course, we're listening to the podcast, but you can really see that it comes from really deep down intrinsic motivated. That's what I can see. And that makes me really curious about, okay, you are now for 9 years here, almost 10. Let's go all the way back to the starting point, Egypt, and growing up there. And what can we find and what can we learn about Mustafa growing up there? And let's go.
Let's do that. But first, I realized I didn't answer the question of why taking the hard way, not the easy way. I think hard versus easy, it's highly subjective. But overall, I agree. It's the hard way to be an entrepreneur, right? It's you get like 1-2% chance of success max.
98% of potential, right?
Yeah. That's a very nice way to put it. I need to keep that in mind. So for me, I would say, I remember also in the pre-conversation when we talked about this, is that I start seeing, like, I made this decision like 2-3 years ago that going through my life, I'm going to make decision in everything, or I'm going to prioritize things based on two folds. One, to make the young version of me proud. Two, to make the 80 or 90 years old version of me regret-free, right? So for me, I feel like if I think everyone should take a shot at being an entrepreneur once in their life. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think everyone should give it a try, just to know how's it like. And you never know, maybe you will be able to do it and it's going to work out for you and you're going to be surprised, and maybe not, but it's going to be a lesson learned. So it's a win-win. And for me, I did this once before. It was a complete coincidence and it did work well, very well. And I sold the company with my co-founder before leaving Egypt for good back in 2012. And the reason why now I went back again is that I got to a point of my life where, all right, I accumulated enough experience. I made my money. I stumbled upon a problem that like, oh, I see a problem that I can do better, or I can solve it, or at least I think I have a chance in solving it. And I was like, okay, would that make the young version of me proud that I will take a risk and go try something that, oh, I can do this better? The answer was yes. And then I was like, okay, and then the 80 years old version of me, would that person be regret-free if I will go give it a try and take the risk? And the answer would yes. And then I was like, all right, if I got that feeling of like, hey, there's a problem, it's something that I can relate to, it's something that I think I can solve, I don't want to regret that. I want to give it a try. It's a good moment in my life. Let's just give it a try and see how it goes. And if it works, then great. I would love for this to work and impact. Like for me, I would always tell my co-founder like, hey, there's like I want to have 100 million employees having a better life and work-life balance, and create this movement of creating healthier workspaces. Let's give it a try. If it works, that's going to be the impact. It's something they're going to be proud of. If it doesn't work, then it will be a bunch of lessons learned, and I can just carry it with me. So that's the answer of why would you try the hard way?
Yes. Thank you.
And now we go back to Egypt.
All the way to Egypt, where it all started.
Yeah. Okay.
25 years ago, right?
21 years ago. Well, no, I was born in Cairo, Egypt. Very interesting upbringing.
Interesting.
I would say, yeah, interesting. My parents come from two opposite sides on the spectrum. My dad comes from a very well established family, got it all, the name, the fame, the money, whatever. And then my mom, like just an average Egyptian family, barely, making it month to month. So it was very interesting to be able to be between these two different spectrums, really confusing. But it's also very refreshing to be able to see two complete different worlds. So that's had some really positive impacts on me, I would say.
Can you name a few examples of the impact it had? Because we tend to say, yeah, and then we move on. But it makes me curious. Okay, what in one house, two complete different with different background parents?
Yeah.
What can you specifically mention some impactful points that you?
Oh man, I would say not taking things for granted. That was one, right? Because it's like my parents got divorced at a very early, like when I was 13. So it was interesting to move from having everything that you need and even more to like now you're struggling to make ends meet, right? So being able to move between these two different worlds, like just teach you how to be resilient, not to take things for granted, to be grateful for the little things. So for me, it's quite often it happens where, I think it's a human thing that you just normalize the thing that you have. And we're like, oh my God, this, I don't know, let's say something didn't work out at work or with my startup. And we're like, like doom and gloom. But then I go back home, I was like, oh, but I got running water and I don't need to struggle to make ends meet. I have all of my basic needs and even more. And then like, okay, remember when we struggled to actually put food on the table? That's no longer a thing. Yeah,
in Dutch we say, tel je zegeningen. It's sort of count your blessings, right?
Exactly. So it helps you to count your blessings and to have perspective, right? Like you'll be able to relate, I don't know, like different people, different perspective or different point of view. I mean, like, I don't know, if I look at my dad, for example, sometimes he just like can't see certain things the same way that I see it, but I understand where he's coming from because that's his perspective, that's his word. But I also understand when I see someone like, I don't know, like my mom or her family, where they see certain things or behave in certain ways. I'm like, oh, I get why this is the reason. So being in between is really, really beneficial to people. Like, oh, I've seen both worlds, and now I get the best from here and the best from there, because each and every one of these two have ups and downs, right? And to be privileged enough to be in between, like you can pick and choose. That's fantastic. So I would say it's a privilege.
And then school. How was school? Are you really a student type of person?
Not at all. So school is interesting. I did very well. I went to engineering school. I also come from a Middle Eastern family, right? So I wanted to go study music or movie directing. Then my dad was like, "Hey, we
didn't discuss that before. That's an interesting one. Okay,
that's new insights." But my dad was like, "Listen, you have two options: a doctor, preferably a doctor. There's a lot of doctors in the family, or an engineer. This is the second option that you can go for. There is no such thing. Get your shit together." And I was like, "Okay, engineering it is." So I did well, I would say. But I also had this very spiky profile throughout my students, like studying time.
Spiky profile.
Spiky profile, yeah.
Please elaborate, explain a little, because spiky
profile. So I did really, really, really well in certain topics, and then terrible in others. So I was like an interest-based kind of student. So I did well in math, physics, chemistry, anything that I need to use my brain for. And then anything that I need to memorize a lot of, like I was in there. Like languages, it's not my thing. We're trilinguals back home. We speak Arabic, English, and French. I barely speak Arabic and English. The French is gone. History, everything that I need to memorize, like I'm not doing great. So like my teacher had this like love-hate kind of relationship. Like, yeah, he's good, but he's not fulfilling his potential. But I made it. I had my struggles. I made it. I graduated successfully. I made my parents proud, and I didn't show up for my graduation. That's how much I didn't really. That's how much I didn't like.
You didn't
school.
care about the whole. No,
I didn't care, but I do regret it. Because my mom was like, I would have loved to see like a picture of you like dressed up and holding your bachelor certificate and all this kind of stuff, so I can hang it in my living room and be proud of it. And I was like, I took that away from her, and I wasn't aware of it back then. I was like, I just called. I was like, hey, did I pass? Yes, you passed, and we're gonna send you information about your graduation party. Like, never mind, thank you, goodbye, and that's it.
Buddy, that makes me curious. Did you talk about with your mother about this, that you regret it? Because I think she would really appreciate that. Although it happened, you can't turn back time, and you don't have to wait until you were 80 and counting your regrets.
True.
Hopefully not.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
But you realized it right now. Did you have a conversation? Did you mention it?
I did.
Did you address it? Yeah.
I did address. Actually, it's one of the things that I when I went through my burnout and I had plenty of time to like reflect on things. It's one of the things that I thought of, and then I called her and I was like, "Oh, by the way, this situation, I'm so sorry." I just apologized for it. She's like, "Oh no, it's fine." But I was like, "Okay, now I see it, because before I didn't consider that at all. I think it was very selfish of me." And she was like, "Oh, it's fine. I'm still proud of you," and so on. And it's like, I can Photoshop it now because technology allows that.
You can't Photoshop the moment, right?
No, true. But we addressed it. Yeah.
I think that's the best thing to do, to acknowledge and to meet her feelings about it, and to express your that you regret it, right? More than that you can't do. So great. True. I think well done. And growing up, your parents being divorced at your age, you were 13.
I was 13.
Yeah. And what about the responsible part? You being responsible for your siblings. How did that work out?
Well, that's an interesting one. The entire thing about being responsible for my siblings and being a role model, that started from like day one. My sister arrived to the world, and then like, okay, I need to carry this with me, and I'm happy it's that way. But then when my parents got divorced, it was really different, and it's really hard for me to express how. But let me give it a try. So I felt like I had to grow up much faster. I had to play a role of the male adult at home, not just to support my siblings, but also my mom. So I have to take this, like, I wouldn't call it burden, but I have to take this responsibility of being a grown-up before I was fully grown up.
Flipping the role into a grown-up, responsible for your mother's feelings also.
Exactly, not just my siblings, but also my mom. I'm like, okay,
that's a heavy load.
It's a heavy load, and I'm still working through the impact of that, right? So one of the things that I've been struggling with for long is, like, I don't know how to talk about my feelings or my emotions. I'm always the provider. Right. Whenever someone comes with a problem, like, okay, I don't have problems. I keep my problems for myself. I keep my challenges for myself. I'm always like outward focused. Like, let me take care of everyone and everything and fix everything. But, like, what about you? Like, oh, we don't talk about that. We suppress it. We keep it down. So that was one of the impact that I'm still dealing with. Again, I don't regret it. It is what it is. I think it was hard for all of us. All of us had to play different roles, or like to grow faster or whatever. So yeah, not complaining, but
but it's not about complaining. I really appreciate that you share that so openly, and it makes you stronger as a person, right? How does it feel for you to, especially now in the podcast, but how do you feel talking about that part, and how do you feel about it? Because not talking about emotions, and now we're sitting in a podcast and you're openly talking about it. But how does that feel?
It feels great. I thought I will never be in a position to be able to feel my feelings or talk about them. So for me to be able to sit here in my very first ever podcast, and talk about it openly, it's a big deal. And I'm happy that I got this far with all the coaching, the therapy, and so on. So yeah, it feels good. And I realized, not just because of my upbringing and my situation, because it's very specific, but my experience that many of, especially my male friends, they struggle with the same, regardless of their, like, and some of them, they are not, their parents are still together. They have a very happy upbringing. So I think it's a man thing.
But we let's stay specific. It's a man thing, and then what do you mean? What is the man thing then? That not talking openly about and expressing our emotions and feelings. Emotions and feelings.
Yeah. All right. I feel like, again, that's how I feel it. I'm not saying it is. I'm just I feel like it's a man thing. Yeah. And now that I'm in my 30s and I'm opening up about it, and it encourages some of my friends to also do it. And I have many of my friends to start actually doing so. I think we just got to a point of our life when we realized how we were carrying ourselves through the past years is no longer sustainable. It's not working, and we need to work through it. And
a certain persona at a certain time.
So
which was useful.
It was useful back then, but it's not sustainable now. So I'm seeing a lot of my friends and people in my network actually opening up, and like obviously different levels, but like I see that the awareness is being developed and people are aware of it.
And what helped you to open up? And what helped you in terms of you just mentioned therapy, but then starting therapy, you have to right away, if you have to acknowledge at first and recognize, hey, maybe there is something. How can you tell a little bit about that process? Because journeys of empowerment, why I'm asking those kind of questions is, of course, of course, you are on a meaningful mission, and but I know your background, and it's you have a remarkable background, and we are still at the beginning. And but what makes it? What makes Journeys of Empowerment hopefully an invaluable platform for meaningful, open, real-life conversations is also trying to find what helped for you And in order maybe for someone else who's listening to the podcast, that, hey, but this resonates really with me and I'm struggling also. And yeah, maybe it's also helpful for me. And it's one thing to be open about it. And another thing is what helped you to become open and what helped you to start working on that.
Yeah. Just what you just mentioned right now. Actually, this is what I hope the outcome of this interview that we're having will be, that will spark an interest or inspire those who will listen to it and
agency.
Yeah. So to answer your question,
yeah,
I just got to a point where life or things weren't sustainable anymore. I just, like, growing up like that or having all of, like, I wasn't really fully aware of it, right? But then I grew up, I started having relationships, friendships, and all of that was impacted by it, right? Like I wouldn't be able to talk about my struggles or my challenges or my feelings or my frustration or whatever it is with friends, with my partners, with my, like, whoever I'm dating at the time. Now I'm not dating anyone, so just in case if you listen to this podcast and you're single. So
I will. It is. We don't edit, so it won't be cut and paste.
All right. Hey, maybe something good will come out of it. No.
All right. Do you have a critical ask? Yeah. Well, maybe for someone who's listening to this podcast who thinks, "Hey, this sounds nice. I want to meet Mustafa." I will. I will leave his details in the show notes, and then you can reach out to him.
Please. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. Mm-hmm. No. I would say it. First, I realized in my relationship that my inabilities to be vulnerable, to talk about my feelings, my emotions, or even how I feel about certain situation or interaction that we have, and just like suppress these, and then it comes out in sometimes like passive aggressive, or even if it doesn't come out as passive aggressive, just the fact that you're with someone for years and that person is not able to have a read on you on like what's bothering you, what's frustrating you, what is your fears, your pains, and so on. It's quite frustrating. I can only imagine. So these kind of challenges or issues that I was dealing with, it wasn't only me dealing with it, but I had everyone around me who's in my close circle dealing with it, right? Whether it's a friend or whether it's a girlfriend. And then I got to a point where like I see the impact of that clearly, and it's severely impacting my life negatively, just personally, professionally, or romantically. And I was like, okay, I see it. Mm-hmm. I guess I know where's it coming from, but I didn't know how to go from here. Like how do we solve that? I don't even know how to describe if I'm feeling something. I don't know how to give it a label, and I don't know how to talk about it. And I was like, okay, I guess it's time for me to do what people call therapy, which culturally, like where I come from, like you go to a therapist only if you're like visibly crazy, you know, like a white suit kind of situation that, you know, tie you up and stuff.
Is there some sort of stigma?
Huge stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah. For us, like even when I remember when I told my mom, like, yeah, I'll call you later because I'm going to therapy. And I was like, and then she called me multiple times. And I was like, oh, why are you going to therapy? Are you okay? Mm-hmm. It's like a big deal, you know? And I was like, no, it's fine. And then I had to actually explain to her, like, this is okay. And then she's actually started opening up to the idea. And then every time I'm like, so what did you learn in therapy now? For her, this is like interesting. Like she's learning new things through me. So yeah, it was therapy. There was a point where like, I need to really overcome the stigma, which it was really, really hard. But it was harder to live with myself with all of that baggage I was carrying before. And I was like, okay, between the pain of going to a therapist and overcome the stigma versus the pain that I'm going through now, I think it's less painful to go to a therapist. So my friends at the time, who are still friends now, they were like very encouraging. Like, no, it's normal. If you break your leg, you would go to a doctor and you just wear a cast. That's normal. Like, if something happened to your brain or your feelings or your emotions, you go to a doctor who call the therapist and they work on this stuff. That's normal. Don't look at it this way, Mustafa. So I got all of the encouragement from my ex-girlfriend at the time, my friends, and then I started doing my therapy. And then from there, I started doing coaching as well. It's like, let's double down in this. And then it helped greatly. So if you relate to what I'm talking about, please go see a therapist.
Look at you, 2025, and so openly talking about this, knowing that only 5 to 10 years, 5 years ago, it wasn't in your whole vocabulary.
No, not in the dictionary. No.
Not in the dictionary to go to a therapist, let alone to be openly talking about in a podcast. So thank you again for your openness, and I realize that we are jumping right away from now and let's go back to where we were in Egypt, because Egypt is very interesting, and from Egypt you went to a few countries, but before you left Egypt, tell us a little bit about school. It went well. You were a good student. What worked for
playful
you?
Student.
Playful student. a gamifying student.
Gamifying student, yeah.
And and also there is a reason why you left Egypt.
You mean when I was very young, or like when I left Egypt, just moving to Europe?
Yes.
The latter. Okay. Well, I'm gonna come across as a romantic guy now. Not my intention. I moved out of Egypt back in like late 2012, early 2013, and I moved for love. So I was in a relationship with my ex-girlfriend, who's from Poland.
Yes.
And it was a long distance relationship. Long before all the technology that we have today to enable hyper communication. So we're like using Yahoo Chat and MSN. So I hope your audience are old enough to understand what is MSN and Yahoo Chat.
We'll see.
And we after I finished my college, I sold, like I started a startup with a friend and we sold it out. After graduation, I did my military service, and I finished that. And I was like, okay, now it's time for me to like be an adult. And based on my upbringing, like you finish your university, you get a job, you have a partner, you get married, you have kids. So there's this like linear progression and path. And I was like, okay, follow the path, right? Like I'm in love with someone. Let's make this happen. Back in 2011, we had like a massive revolution and the entire country was upside down. So we decided not to live in Egypt and we moved out. We moved to Sweden. She was doing her master's there. Sweden didn't work out for us. So she graduated and then she was like, hey, I lived in the Netherlands and I speak Dutch. It's a great place, very diverse. Let's go to the Netherlands and start our life there. And we moved here with the hope of like, okay, we're going to start our life from scratch. We don't know anyone. The only, upside point that she spoke Dutch. Like let's move and let's build a family and let's build our life there. So we moved here back in very early 2015, and it was really a struggle. Being not a European citizen, that meant I had to like be at home for like months waiting for all my documentation to get done, because we were in Sweden before and she was studying there. And we were barely able to find like a sustainable source of income or like a well-paid job. Then when we moved here, we only had like money enough to cover us for like 2-3 months. And we lived like a really, like a really low life, let's say. So we had this tiny apartment with a mattress on the floor, and that was life for a whole year. And we even were like jumping apartments every 2-3 months because we weren't able to get like a full rental contract that we couldn't even afford. So we're just like subletting from this person who's traveling for a bit and this person who's doing an exchange for like 3 months. So within 1 year, I think we moved apartment like 3-4 times. We were living in Rotterdam back then. But then things worked out. Like I got all of my documents done in 3-4 months. I got my first job here. I was working for a company called Binder. as a business developer.
Yes.
And then life started spiraling back up. After 1 year of being doing business development, I moved to product, which is, I realized this is my passion and this is the one thing I want to do for the rest of my life, either as an employee or an employer. Same thing goes to her. She managed to finally get like a good job. And then
Also in tech, right?
She wasn't in tech at the beginning.
No.
She was actually doing she was working for a packaging company, and then she was doing customer service because she spoke like 5 languages. And then she was like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. So I helped her out actually breaking the tech. So I was coaching her, and then now she's in tech. So yeah, that's the story in a nutshell, how I ended up being here.
Yeah, and I realized that we're jumping a little bit back and forward. So for the listener, sorry, but we missed one essential point in Egypt around 2011 when the revolution, because that specific, few weeks, really planted a seed in you, and gives also partly answer why you're doing what you're doing, and what you're aiming for in life, what your mission is. So, sorry, listeners, we're going one time back to 2011.
One step back.
And
why time traveling? That's
But for us it's easy. We see each other, and then they're like, okay, man, now they're going back again to 2011. But this you don't want to miss, because.
Yeah. Let's do the throwback.
Yeah, let's do the throwback.
And let's make it brief for them. Okay. 2011, we had a dictator. He was in power for about 30 years. So imagine if you're 30 years old, the only person that you know as a president is the same guy. Democracy at its finest, I would say. So we had a massive revolution when there was like millions of people in the streets. I was out on the streets of Cairo, but unfortunately or fortunately, we got locked in a square. Imagine like Dam Square, everyone is protesting, but then at some point you have, police forces surrounding you all over the place. So you are there and there is no way back. And that just kept going for about like a bit less than 2 weeks. Like tens of people getting injured. People are actually losing their lives. But then all of us were like fighting under one flag of like, okay, we want to have something better for our country, right? And for me, like being like barely 21 at the time, it's like, yeah, I want a better future for me, for my siblings, for my family, for my kids in the future, and so on. So yeah, I was standing for something greater than I, and then all of us collectively were doing that, and we were facing death every single hour that passes you by, being outside on the square fighting for this for like 2 weeks. It's an hour when you skip death, pretty much. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of people. But then at the end, we succeeded. And for me to be able to be part of this, like we are collectively going after one goal. All of us are like being very selfless. All of us are like aimed at something bigger than us. And seeing just people giving their lives, and some of them unfortunately lost it. Many of us were willing to lose it as well for a greater good. That just made me feel like, oh my God, I didn't know that I have it in me, that I can just go and put myself in such a situation for something much bigger than I. Like, it's not something personal. There is no personal gain for me.
No.
Like, obviously, if we remove a dictator and life gets better, everyone's lives get better. But again, it was something for a collective good. With no guarantees it would happen. So you can go and risk it all and then nothing happens. So yeah, that was the experience.
Impactful experience, right? And then, how old were you then?
I was 21.
21, and you were still living at home.
I was still living at home.
And home was then your mother's place?
Home was a space between I was living between my mom's place and my grandma's place.
Ah, yeah, okay. And did she know where you were? Because I can imagine you being out there. Did she know?
At the beginning, not. So for those who feel bad that, oh, your parents got divorced since a young age. Well, there was some benefits to that, which is you can get away with stuff like, oh, I'm at my grandma from my dad's side place. Yeah. So like she wouldn't know. So I was playing this card, right? But then at some point you found out, but likely it was towards the end. And I was able to like communicate with them. And I remember going back home for the first time, like I got slapped really hard across the face. It's like, what if something happened to you? What if, well, I was like, oh, everyone was there. There's like millions of people were there. I'm not better than anyone else, you know, like we were doing this for you, for me, for us, for the next generation, like what's wrong with that? And obviously as your family, they don't want anything to go wrong with you, obviously, but at the end they were understanding it, or like they were like my mom was very proud of it. My dad and his entire family is still not. They were like, "This is rascal. This is crazy. What do you know? You're a child." But my mom was like, "Oh, this is scary, but I'm proud of you that actually." But don't do this again.
Yeah,
don't do this again.
No, of course, and I can imagine a mother saying that. Being a parent myself, I don't want to think about those kind of situations where one of your children ends up in a situation which can easily go wrong. That's the vulnerable part about being a parent. So
true.
Yeah,
true.
And you mentioned that when you were there, it gave you a profound feeling of being part of something bigger than you.
True.
And I heard that also when you were talking about Novu and creating something which has a lot of impact and is also bigger than you.
Yep.
So my assumption is was this one of the pivotal moments in your life, of the impactful moments in your life that planted a seed for you to?
I wouldn't say.
Can we say that? Is there a relationship between those two?
There's definitely a relation. I would say the reason. I think it's just a host of reasons, right? As I mentioned, like my being the first child, the firstborn child for my entire family, that played a role. Having 3 younger siblings, my parents got divorced. The culture, the entire situation with the revolution. So all of these together, they accumulate to create that kind of person that I am today. So these are experiences that shaped me, but I wouldn't say like that one specific experience made me like, now I want to build. No, I wouldn't claim that, but I would claim like it did play a bigger role because it was my first time like, oh my God, like I am actually doing this at larger scale. Because before it was always home and family, and now it's like, no, this is much bigger than just home and family. So that was my first time having a taste of that. And I was like, whoa, it feels good. Like doing this for the family felt great, but this feels wonderful. It's a larger scale.
Complete other question. Where comes your where did you build resilience? How did you build resilience?
How did I build resilience? I didn't build it. It wasn't a choice. I had to.
You had to.
I had to. And going back to, like you briefly mentioned that, okay, you were born in Egypt.
Yeah.
You traveled a lot. So every couple of years I was living in a new country because of my dad's job back then. And that's when the resilience started.
Living somewhere and after 3 years leaving that country, going to another country again, and then that is contributing to resilience.
It did contribute to resilience greatly, and let me unpack it a little bit.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, like when I tell you like, oh, I lived in all of these countries, and like, oh my God, this is amazing, this is great, blah blah blah, and I was just roll with it, like, yeah, it's great, it's amazing. But then when you start like reflecting and meditating and doing therapy and so on, then you start like, oh, but was it just cool and great, or there's also like pros and cons for this experience? So to deep dive specifically on the resilient part, I had to be resilient. It wasn't by choice. I was forced into it. And I'm really happy that happened, because if I used to reflect back at this experience, like I really don't like it because I got blocked out of my homeland, my family, my friends, and I just have to rebuild this all the time as a kid, and that was really painful. But now I look back, I was like, oh, but that experience also facilitated so many different positive things, or created different positive things. Resilience is one of them. So when I left Egypt, I was like 7 years old. Going to a new country, you don't speak the language, you don't have friends, you feel, I don't know, awful about the entire situation. And then slowly you realize like, oh, now I'm learning, now I'm having friends, now life is good. And then you get blocked out again, and then you do it again, then you do it again, and then you realize like, oh, okay, if I get put into such a situation, I know that I got it on me, that I can fix it, or I can make it work. So for me, I remember I was talking once with my ex, and she was like, oh, how do you do that? Like, you just moved to a new country, you don't know anyone, like, how do you deal with it? I was like, oh, easy. And then it was really interesting to see her perspective. She's a very well-traveled person. She traveled even more than I, but she just never really consistently lived abroad. And for her, it's like, that's crazy that you can do this. And people are like, no, I normalize it. You just go and you learn the language and you meet people and you create friends. And I thought, like, tomorrow, if I'm going to wake up in a completely different part of the world, I know that I can rebuild my life, like social, financial, career. I can rebuild everything that I have from a scratch. Give me like 2-3 years and I'm going to get it figured out. Not because I'm super awesome or anything, because I was forced into it multiple times. And then you realize like, oh, I'm resilient now, I guess. So it wasn't a choice.
It's interesting because there is also a sort of bicultural element to it, right? Yeah. Not being in your own home country where you're born, so forced in to live and to adapt to a new situation and culture where you're at that moment. So it's right away from that start, it's a bicultural situation. And that was at the Jackson event in Eindhoven some weeks ago. And one of the learnings out of that beautiful experience with, I think, 70 people talking about the distance to the labor market for people with a migration, refugee, and bicultural background. Yes. And one of the positive things of growing up and living in and being in a bicultural situation also reinforces resilience, because you have to adapt and you become resourceful. And that's what I also hear from your side, is I become resourceful, and wherever I'm going to live, I will be able within 2-3 years to find my way. And I think that's a sort of turning a challenging situation in not from into a victimhood, but more into a situation where you will find your way ultimately.
Yeah, like I think it stresses on resilience, adaptability, resourcefulness, and I think also what you just mentioned now, it's a good segue into the question that you asked me before in the prep, like, hey, what is one rule that you do live by?
Yes.
And that rule is basically, I don't remember when I heard it or where, but I heard it many, many years back, and it stuck with me forever. And that's my interpretation of that quote, which is, there is nothing honorable about victimhood except overcoming it.
Beautiful. There's nothing more.
There's nothing honorable
about victimhood
except overcoming it. Exactly.
Wow, that's a profound one.
I do believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a sort of first principle for you. Became a sort of first principle for you.
It is a first principle. It's something that I live by. It's something that I need to constantly remind myself of whenever things get hard. And I hope whoever going to be listening to this is going to inspire them as well. Easier said than done, though.
Yeah, it is. It is. And as we're heading towards wrapping up this beautiful conversation, and I hope the listener still follows us a little, because we're stepping back and forward. And but I enjoyed it really. And is to that point of the 80-year-old and the 8-year-old. And what do you hope the 8-year-old is most proud of when you're 80?
What do I hope the 8 years old is proud of when I'm 80? At the moment, I would say, so given that I'm working in Novu, and given that we're on a journey that we want to create a movement to create a better work-life balance or better workplaces, I do know that we have about 200 million employees within the EU, which is the target market for Novu. And the thing that I want to be proud of is that we impacted at least 100 million employees' life positively, and we made their life better. So yeah, that would be my hope. This is the
sort of North Star of the North Star.
Yeah, that's the North Star of like, oh, the 8 years old will be very proud, and the 80 years old will also be very proud and regret-free and ecstatic, I would say.
And the regret-free one is also an interesting one, right? Because we rather prefer to live our life and just do a lot of things to prevent that we regret not doing them.
Yep.
But can you give an example for you, which you think, like for me, stepping in the podcast scene, I was like, okay, embrace discomfort and doing it anyway, because the first time I heard my voice directly in a good microphone and a headset, I cringed. So, but
that's how I'm feeling right now.
You sound perfect. You're a natural. So, you couldn't say that it is the first time you're in the podcast, actually.
It's my very first time.
Yeah, it's your very first time. I'm glad that we are here in the podcast. But no, but the funny thing is, of the interesting thing is, how to prevent something that you would regret at your when you're 80. How do you know when you will regret it if you don't do it? How do you know?
How do I know? I think you just feel it. I think you just need to be attuned with your feelings. I can give you an example, not to over-index on Novu, because I'm not trying to let me just shamelessly promote my startup here. Novu is great. It's basically I was at this moment where I worked for a startup that's fully remote, so I can live anywhere that I want, and I was enjoying that. I was traveling a lot. I was getting paid my 6 figures, good title, life is great set of benefits around the role that I had and my life back then. But at the same time, I was like, oh, but I have this idea that I've been on and off, and also due to my burnout, me changing, moving from one company to another, there was many factors that delayed Novu to come out. And then I was like, okay, do I continue keeping my current job and life is good and just forget about it? It's good that we did some prototype and we did customer interviews and we validated it and we created a website and initial validation and so on. Should we just just leave it behind, just focus on moving forward? And I also came out of a breakup and everything, so life wasn't great at that time. Should I do that? Or should I be let's take a leap of faith, take a full jump, give this a try. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't work, well, you learned a lot. You go back to that life again that you had and the full-time job and stuff. And I was like, okay, what if I'm 80, would I regret it? And then I was like, the answer is yes. I'm going to spend all of this, I don't know, time in my bed, what if, what could have been, and so on. And that just kept, I was like, no, maybe I just feel this way because it's my baby and I'm connected to it and so on and blah, 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 blah. And I just completely disregarded it. But for 6 months, it was just coming back. It's just like persistent feeling of like, oh no. And it just gave me this anxiety. And I was like, okay, so now I need to make a decision. This is keep coming back, right? Because like your gut feeling is telling you something and I need to make a decision. Either I'm saying like, no, we're not doing it. And you just make peace with it and you move on, or you jump and do it. But being in between state and just having this anxiety is not helping anyone. It's not helping me out with my current job and my life and everything. It's not helping me out to do anything with Novu either. I'm just like in between state and it's just not great at all. So I was like, no, okay. If this is persistent, then we just have to do it. Let's just do it. There's always excuses. And I had my excuses and my fears, and it's not the right time, and the market and the money and my mortgage and all this kind of stuff. But I was like, okay, but remember the 8 years old and the 8 years old, let's do it. So I did it. So I think the short answer would be you would feel it. You just need to, if you sit on the edge of your bed at night and be like, am I going to regret this? Yes or no? And if you ask this multiple times and the answer is like, yes, but, then the answer is yes, you're going to regret it. Then just go do it. And it's going to feel scary. And you know this cliche saying of like, oh, when it feels like super scary to jump, then that's the time for you to jump. This cliche advice couldn't be more true in that situation. If it keep coming up, then you have to do it. Or else just deal with this anxiety for an extended period of time. And I realized I don't want to do it. We didn't get this far to get this far. Let's just jump and learn.
Excellent way to end our conversation, because the biggest advice you, and especially from you, who wasn't really able to talk about, and there's something interesting.
Yeah.
The word that multiple times popped up in my mind, but I didn't share it until now.
Okay.
Is one conversation I had with Farzan. You know Farzan?
Of course. Great guy.
Yes, and it was about unconditional love. And it was also about, that was really, really beautiful conversation also. And the one thing I remember, and that word pops up now multiple times, is allowing. And are we able to allow to feel what we feel? So able to allow ourselves to feel.
Yep.
And are we able to allow ourselves to feel that we're good enough to do something, and that we allow ourselves to feel something that we feel? You know, it's all about allowing ourselves. So it's acknowledging, it's recognizing, but also allowing ourselves to have feelings, because pushing it away, suppressing it, won't work at the long term. It's a short-term persona game. We put on a persona, multiple personas, and I talk about from out of experience and multiple personas. But in the end, are we able to allow ourselves to feel what we feel? And also to listen to our gut.
Exactly.
When our gut is really, really screaming for, in this specific conversation, Novu.
This just reminded me of a conversation I had with a mentor of mine before, and it wasn't about the entire topic about feeling your feelings or anything like that. It was actually about work and about product. And I remember he asked me, "Oh, so what is your gut feeling telling you what you should do in this situation?" And I'm like, no gut feelings. You should just follow data.
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay, let me tell you something. I need you to experiment with something. Every time you have a feeling about something, write it down, and then use the data and everything, and then figure out if your gut feeling was right or wrong. And I need you to keep doing this for a couple of months. And then I need you to be able to measure the accuracy and the correctness of your gut feelings. And then I remember I came back and I talked to him about it. I was like, I'm like at 83% of the time being correct. And it was like, see, your gut feelings is basically your pattern recognition. It's a source of data. Maybe it's not the strongest source of data, but it exists for a reason, and you have to honor it.
It feels stronger than whatever real data feels like, right?
Exactly. But at that moment, like the context was work.
Yeah.
And I understand that you need to like have like data points and everything, but like bringing it into like this context of like, hey, you need to be able to allow yourself to listen to your gut feeling or like your intuition, and you need to be able to like experiment with it. Like, oh, if I feel this way, or if I want to do this, or I don't want to do that, try, and then measure it. Like, just see, oh, when I felt I have to do this and I did it, now I look back, how was that experience? Because I get this a lot, like someone like, oh, but what if I do something and it ended up being wrong? It's like, what about you do it and then you judge later? And then in my experience, every time I talk to one of my friends about that, they always come back saying, hey, you know what? I did that. And I realized I'm more right than wrong. And now I'm developing the confidence on being able to listen to this inner voice and to trust it. And like to use my gut feelings and my brain in combination to make the best decision moving forward, not just like relying on one over the other. So my advice will be, give it a try, see the outcome, and then start developing this trust. You will realize that you're more often right than wrong. And then you're like, okay, then it's a valid source of data. It's this feedback exists for a reason. And you have to honor it. You cannot just be completely suppressing one major part of who you are, and just like using just my brain or whatever information society or everyone around me is providing me, and just make decision based on that. So yeah, that's my my last piece of advice.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut and embrace discomfort and do it anyway.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it.
Just like Nike said, just do it.
Mustafa, thank you very much for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, because
I did.
It is, and it's your first time. It's really.
It's yeah, Michiel, thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to me that I'm here talking about not work-related stuff, but just
your journey.
My journey, who I am as a human being, with a good friend like yourself, and in a place that means a lot to me. We are in Bussum, by the way.
Yeah, you have a history in Bussum.
I lived here for a bit. It was great. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes,
I really enjoyed this, and whoever listened to it, I really hope that we managed to inspire you today. And you know where to find me if you want to reach out for, I don't know, a casual conversation or a question or whatever.
We will put that in all your details in the show notes. Amazing. So you can reach out after your pitch, your romantic pitch.
Forgot about that already. Yeah.
No, I didn't. So if you want to reach out after if the romantic pitch somewhere hidden in the conversation resonates with you, you will find the details in the show notes. The hidden seducer is it. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.